You're listening to What It's Like with Luce, a podcast highlighting ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host Lucy Norris, and on today's episode, I'm chatting with fashion photographer and founder of camera strap brand That Candid Shop. From the moment she clicked her first picture on a disposable camera, this week's guest fell in love with the art form. Experimenting with genres during school, she decided to take things a step further and study photography more in depth. Having spent time at fashion weeks growing up and becoming friends with influencers during her college years, she realised the potential in street style photography, and everything took off from there. Growing an impressive roster of clients that included the likes of Sarah Ashcroft, Pixie Lott, Rachel Stevens and Lottie Moss, it wasn't long before she became the go-to for snapping the perfect Instagram moment. Sharing her story along with how she built her very own camera accessory business, here's what it's like to be Rebecca Spencer. Alright, so I think to kick everything off, it would be really good to go all the way back to the very beginning. It's always a good place to start. And talk a bit about your initial interest in photography and what drew you towards it.
So initially, I feel like my passion for photography goes back to the very beginning camera, which was the disposable camera. And when I used to go on school trips, I used to get so excited because I knew that my mum was going to buy me a disposable camera. So I think that was the first initial love for a camera. And then it kind of turned into a passion at school. I wasn't very academic, and I found that I was always drawn and looking forward to doing the creative classes. So got really into photography that way, but was really weird photography, I must say. It was very morbid, and I used to do self-portraits and manipulation. So that's kind of where the initial interest began, I would say.
When was the moment where you realized that you did want to do this after school and you wanted to take something that was a hobby and a passion and turn it into your reality?
I have to say, I think it was when I did my A-levels, and I did photography, media studies and drama. And I still knew I wanted to do photography, but when I then got accepted onto my art foundation course, they kind of push you to do loads of different creative things. And one of them obviously was photography. And I just remember after doing that year, I was like, this is 100% what I want to do.
And then, so I guess leading on from that, you mentioned there that your initial entry into photography was shooting more maybe alternative things, and obviously now you're predominantly a street style.
So fashion now, so it's crazy. Yeah.
So how did that come about, and how did you find yourself being drawn towards that niche rather than what you were initially interested in?
So, and also, I also want to highlight on the fact with photos as well, is I lost my mum 7 years ago now. Oh. So I also feel like that also pushes my interest in photography, because one, she bought me my first DSLR camera, so I feel like I always wanted to push that, but also it makes me realise how important photos are and how they have such an effect on all our lives.
Yeah.
And that portrait is so important, and when you create memories for other people as well. I know my work's now very fashion, but I do sometimes enter moments like that. I did Chloe Lloyd's wedding a few years back, and it was just the night before, and her husband Josh was having this moment with his grandma, and as I took it I thought, oh my god, that photo is going to mean so much to him one day. And sadly he actually lost her recently, and he actually used that photo on Instagram. Oh, and it was so weird. I actually remember having that moment and then seeing it. I was like, oh, I'm really glad that I caught that for him.
It's such a unique way to capture a moment in time. And I think it's so amazing that we have it now, that you can always have things to look back on. And I guess now even further going into video, you can rewatch memories that have already happened, which is really weird when you think about it, but really cool as well.
And it honestly fascinates me so much. So yeah, it is. And then obviously turning into fashion, it kind of happened with my auntie, who was a fashion designer. I used to literally admire her so much. She was my biggest idol growing up. And she used to get me in behind the scenes when I was 16 to London Fashion Week. And I used to literally just walk around in absolute aura, oh my goodness, and have my phone on auto.
Yeah.
My camera on auto. and just like play around. And yeah, that's kind of like the first initial love into fashion. And then my actual entering into fashion, well, I had two options at university. I had the option to go to London College of Fashion to do fashion photography, or I had the option to go to London College of Communication and do like a mixture of everything. And still at that point, I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go. I got accepted on both, but I still wasn't sure I wanted to do fashion. So I took the London College of Communications course, and then, yeah, explored fashion, but not all the time. And then obviously being really good friends with Sarah Ashcroft at the very beginning, she was one of the first UK influencers. So I guess I had a bit of a insight to the industry, and kind of started taking photos of Sarah, and that's kind of how I entered more the fashion side.
Yeah, and initially, I suppose, how did you find moving into that area? Was it something, because I think a lot of people
Pretty
kind of,
natural, actually.
yeah, because I feel like a lot of people, well, they definitely give influencers so much stick saying, it's just standing there and taking a picture of clothes, whatever, anyone can do it. And from someone that's studied photography so in depth and, has a real passion for the artistic side of it, how
Yeah.
did you find, I guess, yeah, moving into that industry that people would say is a bit more just superficial and doesn't have that much depth?
Well, I feel like with my photos, like I'm a bit of a, like, when I'm shooting, if I don't like something, I'm like instantly going to move it to make it my style.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like within my work, I really do try and give it that storytelling element. And that's why I'm obsessed with like movement and props, and just like trying to capture someone maybe a little bit more off guard. So I feel like that's the style that I really love. Basically, I just love model off duty. That's basically just what I love.
Yeah, no, it's so cool because I suppose, yeah, working with Sarah Ashcroft, who definitely was one of the first ones to kind of take it to that next level on Instagram. Now people know it's kind of thanks to you that you established those bloggery type shots when no one else was doing it.
Yeah, because I also feel like at the beginning, like there was no one I could intern off or, learn off. I was just literally just like doing it. And yeah, and I guess all my learning came from experience. I just used to shoot for free in between all my lectures. I literally messaged every influencer there was in the UK. There wasn't that many of them. And I just basically used to shoot for free in between all my lectures. And then that's kind of how I built my experience and I guess my reputation.
And so then, yeah, leading off of that topic of reputation and building a client roster list, how was it in the beginning in terms of broaching that subject of needing to make money, turning it into a job, that kind of thing, that freelancers, it's such a scary thing to do. It's so
So
hard to do as
scary.
well. Yeah. And you always feel
Yeah,
so awkward asking people to pay you, even though you'll give up hours of your time to work. I don't know why we do it. It's
I
weird,
know
but
it's.
like,
But I
how
think
was
it's
it for
because
you?
we're passionate, and that's why we're creatives. So I used to work in a pub part-time when I was at uni. So the way I kind of made that step was when I was so overwhelmed with photo shoots. Just didn't have time for the pub job anymore. So when I took that step, I knew then that I had to 100% give it. And I was really lucky that when I did graduated, I'd done all the free work before, that I was then actually earning like a little bit to get me by and like pay for my travel into London and everything. So yeah, that was really lucky.
And then when it came to working with influencers and fully establishing yourself in that world, how did you come to the decision, I suppose, of, because maybe I don't know anything about it, but maybe I would presume that some people would attach themselves to one influencer and just that influencer and travel with them and work exclusively with them, and then others would have a range of clients that they would work with. How did you navigate that aspect of things, and why did you choose to go the way you went?
Yeah, I feel like with my work, I also like to try and adapt to whoever I'm working with. So everyone I work with, I actually use different cameras, I use a different style, like whatever works for their feed. And like that's what I try to do, is just trying to adapt to whoever I'm working with.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear you use like even different cameras and everything. So
Yeah.
like not
I
a lot
can
of
look
people.
at someone's feed before I work with them, and I'll know like, okay, so they like this angle, they like this side of their face, they like these kind of props. Like I just try and like do a bit of stalking beforehand so I can really like understand what they're going to want from me as a photographer.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it, a lot of homework that goes into it that
Yeah,
I
no, there
never knew
is, for
before.
sure.
And I guess one of my questions, you've kind of answered it already, but was going to be, how do you ensure that each person you're working with gets, unique shots? Is it just by using those different cameras and angles and things, or is there like a specific method that you'll go through with each person?
I feel like you can't take the same shot again ever. Like even when you're on a photo shoot and like you get this shot, and you're like, oh, let's try and redo that. You can never redo that shot. It's like impossible. So I feel like everyone does get different stuff. And I also work with a variety of people. Like I work with people like Rachel Stevens, who's like a S Club 7 singer and who does now street style. And then I work with, you know, influencers who are doing like street style fashion. So yeah, I feel like you can never like recreate the same image again. And also I am very like, I will like, when I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see something that inspires me, sometimes it'll be like inspire me for a certain client I have. So if you work with me, you tend to get a few like DMs of like, hey girls, like this works really well for you. I do that a lot with Olivia and Alice, who are two sisters.
Oh, I
That I
love
shoot a
them.
lot.
I actually follow
Yeah, they're
them.
so cool.
Yeah.
And if I ever see anything like a duo that I think, that looked really cool, like I like just send it straight over to the girls, and like I'll say like, let's try and work on doing something like this next time. So I also like to be interacting with my clients as well when off camera.
Yeah, I think that's really nice to also as well establish that relationship first, and not just have it. Well, obviously it's always business, but you can obviously get so much more out of a shoot when you have a bit of a relationship with them before. So do you always try and establish connections that way first?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And like that's another part of my style is I don't want it to feel like a professional photographer you've just met has come on and taken loads of photos of you. Like I want it to feel like they're best friends taking the photos, that you can, that there's a story to the day. You can tell like they've been out for a coffee together, and like I feel like that makes the images more relatable. I feel like Instagram really loves that kind of imagery. And yeah, and I feel like I do have very good relationships with my clients. I like, I feel like they're all my friends.
That's so nice as well, though, because I'm
Yeah.
sure living in London too must have been. So did you move to London to do
Yes, I
this
moved to
job, right?
London about 2 years ago.
Okay, how
That
was
was the
that?
big move, the big move. And yeah,
Yeah.
it was scary because I feel like there was rent to pay and there was all these things. But I do believe like, you know, I believe in The Secret, the book. I don't know if you've read it.
Yes, I
I'm
have. I love
just
it.
obsessed with the law of attraction. And I was just very like, okay, come on now, make it work. And it just, it came and it happened. And I've never had to like majorly worry. So yeah, no, the move was such a positive thing.
Yeah, I'm sure. I love London so much, so it must
Me
be so cool
too.
to live there.
I'm also half Irish, by the way.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, something you didn't know.
Yeah. um, and for you, what was, I suppose, the most difficult thing about breaking onto the scene and becoming a professional photographer? If you had to pick one thing.
I feel like my dyslexia causes a big issue with being a freelance photographer because you associate photography with being really creative and just taking really pretty photos, but it's not. You're running a business, you're writing emails, you're invoicing, you're doing your accounts. There's so much more. Like probably taking photos is probably like 20% of what I actually do. So I feel like my biggest challenge is dealing with that. Like the amount of emails I've sent and thought, oh my goodness, I've spelt that awfully. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I think the thing I find so interesting about anyone that runs a creative business, there's so much props to anyone that does it, because there's so much admin and
Yeah.
I hate just using the word business because that's such a broad term with
No,
no
I know,
meaning
it's
whatsoever.
so
But
true.
you know what I mean? There's so much extra stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't have any idea how to do because you weren't trained. You're creative. You're trained to take
Yeah.
pictures, you know?
I wish now I studied business at school. I'm like, why?
Yeah, I know. Same sometimes, even though I know I would have hated it, but still.
Yeah.
I know I've asked you so much about influencers and street style and everything, but I'm just so curious because I feel like even now we've had influencers for so long. We're all on Instagram, you know, pretty much everyone these days is a micro influencer in some way. But
Yes.
what's it really like to work in that world and, you know, spend a lot of your time in it? Are they
Yeah.
really as bad as everyone says they are? What is it
No,
like?
they are not.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah, they're really not. And I have so much respect for them because there's a lot of pressure on influencers that I don't think people realize because they're such a big marketing tool now. Like if anyone starts a brand now, the first thing they think of is, oh, I'm going to work with influencers. And I feel like, you know, I travel the world with these girls and they work so hard and they're working 24/7. Like I have, you know, and I also see like all the behind the scenes of it. Like it's the preparation, even for a photo shoot, the prep for a photo shoot is like crazy.
Yeah, 100%. I think the whole thing is so inspiring personally because I don't really see the difference between an influencer online and an entrepreneur. It's
Yeah,
the exact same thing. They're building businesses for themselves. Okay, some people might not like the method that they use,
yeah,
but I think even this conversation with you is shedding light on how much goes into that one picture that people just think such a
yeah, no,
live,
and it
take a picture.
does.
Yeah. For you, do you have something or some criteria that makes a subject interesting in terms of even a person when you put your camera in front of someone? Is there some kind of a thing that these people have that makes it easier to shoot them?
That's such an interesting question. I've never been asked anything like that before. I feel no, it's not. There's nothing that I'm like comes to mind that I'm like, oh, they have to be like this, because I feel like I shoot so many like ranges of people.
Mhm.
I feel like I just, whenever I've got a subject in front of me, I just try and like make them feel as comfortable as possible, and just try and make them really happy with the photo they get. And I always feel like the way to get that for me is like adding movement
Yeah.
and just finding out their angle, which you get from just like taking loads of photos and finding it.
Yeah, you definitely must have the patience of a saint. I'd say that it's
Oh, see, I feel like I don't have very good patience. So
oh.
I don't know, but maybe just with photography.
Yeah, maybe. And then so you also have your own brand,
Yeah.
that Candid shot. Can you
Yeah.
tell me about that, where it came from, and just the whole idea behind it?
Yeah, so that candid shot, I actually had the idea such a long time ago. It's even like 3 years ago I started the account. And even if you go onto the account now, you'll still see the post. The first post was 2017, which is just mad.
Yeah.
And it kind of came from like, so as a photographer, I didn't really know how to promote myself because I didn't want to keep posting photos like I was an influencer on my account.
Yeah.
So I found a way to do this was to create a series called RS Camera Selfies, which was basically a series of me, but you didn't really know who I was, but my camera was in front of my face. And that was like just me all around the world and like shoot locations. And that was kind of me showing up on Instagram. And I always like thought, 'cause my camera strap was always featured in this, I was like, I really want a cool camera strap, and like search online. I could never find one that I wanted to like post about. So I then just created the idea in my head that I wanted to create a camera strap brand. And then when lockdown came, I had a lot more time on my hands and actually finally got it down, got into Photoshop, created my designs, and yeah, finally got the ball going. And now it's out, which I can't believe. And I'm absolutely loving the little adventure I'm on.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love the straps as well that I
Thank
was just taking a
you.
look because it's so true. Like I wouldn't have camera equipment, but if I have recording equipment or
Yeah,
I suppose filming cameras, it's always so ugly. It always has to look so ugly. I don't know
it's so
why.
ugly. And it is very niche what I'm doing. I know that. And it's more of just a little project for myself. Like I'm learning all about marketing and like all the backlog of what you know, what's done behind brands. Cause I meet so many like inspirational, like very female dominated brands who I shoot for. And I'm always like, so like, oh my gosh, like I'd love to do like inspired by what they do. So now I've got my own. It's like so nice to be a part of that new, like, I don't know, new group of people, and like I can actually like relate now.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. And how easy or difficult, I guess, is it to take a product from your mind and turn it into a physical thing that you can touch?
It's crazy. Like it was very stressful because I had samples, I wasn't completely happy, so I changed it again, so it was delayed again. And but I'm so glad I did that, because I think when you have a vision and you know you're putting your brand essentially to another brand, you need to make sure you're 100% happy. And yeah, no, I'm over the moon with it. And like when I first took my first ever photos with it, like I can't even express the feeling, like seeing it in like a visual with like my photography style. It was just like, oh my goodness, it was like very overwhelming.
Yeah, I'd say it was an absolute pinch me moment. It's so cool
Yeah,
to have your own anything. It's so cool.
yeah,
Um, and so what do you, I know 2020 is complete. Well, it wasn't a write-off for you. You created a whole brand, but
yes.
in terms of predicting what's going to happen next, it's a little bit all up in the air. But do you have a little plan of where you would like to see this brand go, or what you would like to do with it next?
Yeah, I'd love to hit America with it.
Oh,
I
okay.
feel like America has a lot of like photographer influencers.
Mm.
So and there's like some people I'd love to send it to, and like I'm just visualizing it, you know, put it on the vision board.
Yeah.
um, and for myself, I think I'd love to like start doing workshops, pushing my YouTube channel, and also like get into different genres of photography and push myself, and yeah, hit different parts of the industry.
I know this is going to be hard to pick because you've done some crazy things, but if you had to pick one highlight and one low light of your career so far, what would they be?
Oh, highlight. So, something really cool happened this year. My boyfriend's sister-in-law's niece. I saw her recently, and I just thought, oh my goodness, she has such good like model potential. And I know she mentioned to her mum about maybe like entering the model industry. And I think she's 13. And I did a test shoot with her, just like literally, I've never done one before for someone that age. So it was a bit of a challenge for myself as well. And it was also her first ever photo shoot. And we did this, I actually filmed the whole thing for my YouTube channel. And it's a really raw video, like you really hear me like directing her and everything. And posted the photos on my Instagram, and she got signed by MOT and named models. So that was a
Wow.
big high for me, because I just thought, oh my goodness, like I've just started like this girl's career, like she's now like entering this like model industry, and I felt so proud of her, and I'm so excited for her future. But yeah, that was a really big, like I was so excited about that.
Yeah, that's so cool. It also, I guess, opens you up to a whole different
Yeah,
industry
new
that maybe you'd
industry.
never thought of before.
Yeah, no, for sure. For
That's
sure.
so cool.
And what a low? Oh God, I don't think of low. I guess my low is dealing with not being busy. Like I'm so used to being really busy, but I've had a few weeks, obviously during the pandemic, where I've been quite quiet.
Yeah.
And I feel like me mentally hasn't dealt with that very well. You start questioning yourself and comparing yourself. And I feel like that's something I've needed to deal with. But that's probably my low of my career, that I don't like about my career, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It makes perfect sense because I feel like especially like freelancers and then creatives as well, and then the industry that you work in, it's so dynamic, it's so different every day, it's always moving and busy, that it must have been a really weird shock to just have to sit there and not be allowed to go and shoot different people and stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a weird feeling, but I feel like it's something I really want to work on next year. Like when if I have a day off, like don't sit there and be like down about it, like enjoy it.
Yeah, it's
So
the
I think,
weirdest thing
yeah,
because
like I
you,
had a few days off last week, and I was like, and I got to the end of the 3 days, and I was busy again, and I was like, I wish I actually just enjoyed them days instead of sitting there stressing about being off.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's like when you're working, all you want is a day off. But
Yeah,
then when you have days off, you're like, oh, what do I do now?
yeah, and I feel like we're so like pushed as a generation to always feel like we need to be busy.
Yeah.
Like even if I'm off, I'm listening to podcasts or I'm learning something off YouTube or I'm entering a workshop, and there's no like I don't really know how to turn off.
Yeah, there's like that guilt as well that if you're not doing something you feel like you should be, so then you start feeling bad about it. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
it's weird.
it's like a weird circle.
Yeah, yeah. um, and so I guess over the course of the last few years, and since you started with your photography, it's definitely fair to say you've experienced a lot of success and you've really established yourself as someone credible in the industry. So I'd be curious to know what your personal definition of success is.
It's so interesting that you're asking me this, because I was around my friend's house in the back garden the other week, because obviously that's all we're allowed to do these days.
Mm.
And there was 6 of us, and I literally like turned around to everyone and asked everyone what success means to them, because I
Oh,
feel
no
like
way.
that's such a question that's different to every single person. Like some people it's health, some people it's not setting an alarm in the morning, or it's, picking anything they want off a menu. But for me, I feel like I'm successful when I'm doing what I love. And like, when like you're out and, you meet someone in a situation and they ask you what you do as a career, I know I'm successful when I'm like so proud to say that I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
Like that's my success, is being like so excited to and proud of what I do.
No, I love that because I think that's what so many people strive to do. And then they either are too afraid, you know, don't actually work hard enough to make their dreams happen, or I don't know what it is, but all we really want, I think, is to be able to wake up in the morning and not dread the day ahead because we have to go to work,
Yes,
which
that's when I know.
I admire it so much that you've created a reality for yourself that you love waking up to. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, like I never like dread my day. I'm always like so excited, and I do love the fact that I get to meet so many like amazing people, and I'm such a people person, so I love like just like, yeah, meeting new people all the time. So I'm really really lucky, and I'm so grateful for what I do.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see as well and to hear. I think it's really inspiring for people. And then I do just have one more question, and I'm gonna let you get on with
Yeah.
your Friday evening. If I put your 10-year-old self in front of you now, having been through everything you've been through, both in life and your career, what's the biggest piece of advice you'd give that 10-year-old self moving forward?
Oh, oh God, what would I say to myself? I would say when I was at uni, definitely one of my biggest regrets is like not wasting my time on Netflix. Like I used to sit for hours just watching Vampire Diaries. I think I could have been on YouTube, like learning, and I could have been, even though I feel like education now online is like such a big part, it wasn't so much then, but still. And yeah, because I feel like testing, like doing like shoots and stuff, like I wish I did more. And I also just wish that I didn't compare myself so much to others. Like my favorite quote is like, which Sarah actually introduced me to, was like, don't ever compare yourself to others. Like your superpower is being you. So I
I
feel like
love
that's
that.
something I have to like remind myself a lot.
Yeah.
Is like no one's you, like you do you, and that's, just don't compare yourself.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's something that we all know we shouldn't do, but we do so much. And I don't know
Yeah,
why, because it's
I
crazy.
don't think it's like social media helps that.
No. Yeah. Um,
It's an amazing platform, and I do love it.
yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, I think, social media, and there's so many arguments for and against. But
Yeah.
I love what you said about uni because I was nodding my head so hard at you there. Like I did the exact same thing. And now I'm like, why didn't I start a podcast at uni? Where would I be
Yeah,
now
I
if I
know.
did?
And I feel like now, like there's so much out there, like there's so much to learn from. Like I actually find it quite like the educational side so overwhelming.
Yeah,
There's,
so much
I'm
stuff.
yeah, I do love like listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video. And I feel like now that there's just so many options, it's like, oh, where do I start?
Yeah, I'll just go back to Netflix. It's fine.
Yeah. And then back to Vampire Diaries.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, it's been so great chatting with you. I really appreciate it so much, giving up your time. And I hope that you enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening, and as always, please rate, share, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. And don't forget to follow @WhatIt'sLikePod on Instagram and Facebook. To find out more about Rebecca and her work and services, visit the links provided in the show notes. I'll be back soon with more inspiring stories, but for now, this has been What It's Like with Luce.